Welcome to the East Bay's best podcast, The Capstone Conversation. This is a show that interviews political, government, and community leaders. We look at what is going on in your city, how are we developing things economically, and where are we going from here? Now I'm your host, Jared Ash. Welcome to this episode of The Capstone Conversation. I am your host, Jared Ash. And I am joined today by Caitlin Sly, the Executive Director of Meals on Wheels in the Diablo region. This organization is crucial to people and seniors in particular throughout the area. And we're going to talk about how they're making a difference, how they've transitioned from COVID, and what is the long-term plan on aging in our community. So, Caitlin, welcome, and please tell us a little bit about yourself and the organization.
Sure. Thank you so much for having me, Jared. So, Meals on Wheels Diablo region is an organization that has been in Contra Costa County for over 50 years. Our mission is to enable seniors to live independently for as long as possible. And we do that by delivering meals and other supportive services that keep them safe and independent in their homes. I've been with the organization for 4 years. Before that, I was at the Food Bank of Contra Costa and Solano for about 12 years. And so have spent pretty much my entire career in nonprofit work and specifically food insecurity work. And, one of the main reasons that I wanted to come to Meals on Wheels Diablo region is not only the impressive programs and huge impact that this organization has on the community, but also just being able to focus on such an underserved population of older adults. Frequently, they are the last to, be thought of in our community. People tend to be forgotten as soon as they turn 60. And, only about 3% of philanthropic dollars go to senior serving programs. So it's really important to me that we take care of folks as they age. We all want to be able to age with dignity. I know I do. And I certainly hope that these programs are there for me when I get older.
So let's talk about food insecurity. Can you define what that is and who who faces that in our communities?
The technical definition of food insecurity is not knowing where your next meal is going to come from. And so having stress around that, having insecurity around that, and that can be for many different reasons. What that looks like for us is, again, a variety of different reasons. Sometimes it's older adults that just don't have enough funds to be able to afford food. I mean, we all know that the cost of food has been skyrocketing. Even now, as inflation starts to go down a bit, food costs aren't going down. And so we have a lot of seniors that are on fixed incomes and their income stays the same while food costs go up. So economic factors are a primary reason. However, we also have seniors who may have the means, but can't physically get out to get food. A lot of what we do are home delivered meals to people who are very, very ill or very, very frail, or, we have a woman who is blind. And so it's really difficult for her to prepare her own food safely. We have people who have physical ailments that make it difficult to stand long enough to cook. And so they really, if they live alone and they don't have a caregiver or family that is taking care of them, then that's where we can come in and provide a meal. Many of the people that we serve, you know, have outlived their family, have outlived their friends. And so they don't necessarily have that social safety net that some of us are lucky to have. Or maybe they have adult children that live on the other side of the country. And so what we see is oftentimes we think of ourselves as serving the older adults, but we also serve the whole family because we're really giving that peace of mind to the adult child that lives in New York and can't check in on mom or dad every day. And so we're able to do that by delivering meals to seniors' homes.
How big is your staff at the organization, and how many volunteers do you typically work with there?
So we have about 65 staff members, a combination of full time and part time. Many are never in our office because while we have a central office, we serve the whole county. And so many of our staff are out in the community delivering meals, running 7 of our cafes where people can come and sit down and have a meal to eat. We have staff that are out in the community doing exercise classes, we have fall prevention classes, and so we do a lot of things out in the community that help seniors socialize and stay independent. And I think that's one of the common misconceptions about our organization is that, people hear the name Meals on Wheels and they think they know what we do, which we do, deliver meals to homebound older adults. But many people don't know that we also have cafes and we also have friendly visitors that provide companionship for isolated seniors. We do case management for people that are facing eviction or needing counseling services. We also have an elder abuse prevention specialist that works with other county partners like the DA's office and the Family Justice Center and Adult Protective Services to help investigate and prevent elder abuse throughout the community. So there's a lot of things that we're doing all to, keep our older neighbors safe and healthy. And we definitely rely on volunteers. Our organization would stop working within an hour if we didn't have volunteers. So we typically have somewhere around 600 to 700 active volunteers, many who deliver meals once a week. It's only like a 2-hour commitment, and they pick up meals and deliver them to people's homes, and their job is much more important than delivering a nutritious meal. They really create relationships with the folks on their route, and oftentimes they're the eyes and ears. They're the ones that will tell us, Mary fell last night and she was not looking good and she needs help. And that way we're able to then, either connect with our client's emergency contact or go out and do a home visit and see what we can do to make sure that our clients are safe and okay. So we really rely on volunteers for that. But our volunteers also do friendly visiting. So they may just hang out for an hour and chat with seniors that are really isolated and really need that companionship. We also have volunteers that serve lunch at our cafes, ones that are part of our friendly helping program, which is where they run errands for seniors, like helping them pick up a prescription or taking them to get their hair cut. So there's a lot of different ways that volunteers can plug into our organization, and we are so incredibly grateful for what they do because, like I said, we would not be able to deliver services for one day without them.
And how does somebody find out about volunteer opportunities?
The best way is to go on our website, which is MOW diabloregion.org, and they can sign up. They can look at all the volunteer opportunities. They can also give us a call. Our number's on our website, but it's 925-937-8311. And we're happy to have them fill out an application and start getting involved.
Great. And I think it's important to note that you said you're serving all of Contra Costa County, even though you call yourselves the Diablo region, you are the county organization.
Yes, we serve all of Contra Costa County with all of our supportive services. We deliver meals in Central and East Contra Costa because there is a Meals on Wheels of West County and they deliver in West Contra Costa. They do not have the wraparound services that we do. And so all of our case management, fall prevention, exercise classes, all of that is completely countywide. And then our nutrition services are in Central and East Contra Costa.
I I found interesting in what you were saying, the volunteers who go out and the relationships they have with people that somebody could have fallen and hurt and they could just be sitting there or I remember one time my 90-year-old grandma at the time got stuck in the bathtub, and had somebody not, checked on her like that night, she probably would have been stuck in there for 2 days, not able to reach the phone. So just having somebody who's checking on these people, yeah,
It's really important. It's peace of mind for the family, it's peace of mind for the senior, and I can't tell you how many times it's happened where a volunteer will knock on the door and nobody answers, and then they hear somebody, a faint voice in the background, and are able to find that our client fell in the middle of the night, and it has been laying on the floor for hours, and if our volunteer wasn't there, who knows how long they would lay there. And then the great thing is that once we're able to, connect that person to the services they need to, recover and get healthy again, we have a fall prevention program that will actually send an occupational therapist into the home, do a whole fall risk assessment, and then based on that assessment, will provide recommendations, and then we send a licensed bonded contractor out to install things like railings or grab bars, shower chairs, just to make the home safer. And all of our services are completely free of charge. So it's a really great resource for people who have fallen or are afraid of falling or at risk of falling. I know that can be something that as we age becomes a huge fear. And so can also really be peace of mind to make sure that the home that they're living in is accessible and stays safe for them because, I mean, none of us want to move from our homes unless we absolutely have to. And it's especially as you get older, it becomes really difficult to move. And so as much as we can do to allow people to stay in their homes where they're comfortable and around their possessions, that's our ultimate mission.
I certainly didn't know how much the organization did beyond the food delivery. And so that's, I think, a really important message for our listeners out there to know how much you're doing out there.
Yeah, it's a lot more than a meal.
Uh, I want to pivot a little bit and talk about COVID and what happened during COVID. Did you see an increase in this? Did you see people more isolated? And what's happened post COVID?
We saw a huge increase in the amount of need, both from people who I think probably always needed our services, but just heard about us for the first time because so many people were talking about, needing home delivered food. We also saw a lot of people who needed us what they thought would be temporary, just while I'm sheltering at home, I need food delivered. And then, you know, when we all thought this would last 3 weeks, then I'll be fine. And what we saw was really that those folks have stayed on our program. And the reason is some of them, like I said, already needed it. Some of them really were more mobile and able bodied. And then as soon as, they sheltered at home for a couple of years and weren't driving and weren't getting physical exercise, they became less mobile and more frail. And so we have a lot of folks that have, you know, become in need of our services who may not have been before. We more than doubled since the pre-pandemic era, the amount of services that we're providing. So, prior to COVID, we were serving about just over 300,000 meals a year. And last year we delivered over 700,000. So it's been a huge growth and it hasn't gone down. And so we really have to figure out, how are we going to adapt and maintain this level of need and actually grow it because as we know our population is aging. It's the fastest growing segment of the population are adults over 60. And so we have to grow with the population. We also during COVID noticed an increase in the need for a quantity of food. So, the seniors that we served and had been serving, we were finding that one meal a day just wasn't enough. And so we started a few new programs during COVID as well. One being our breakfast bag program, where we deliver a week's worth of breakfast. And that is like light, kind of healthy snack breakfast items like oatmeal and yogurt and string cheese and fresh fruit and things like that. Because what we found is many of the seniors we served were taking their one meal that we deliver each day and, eating some for lunch, some for dinner, and then saving a little to take at night with their medications. And so our breakfast program really has enabled folks to not have to ration their food, which we don't believe anybody should have to do, and to have some healthy light items to take with medications and to snack on throughout the day. And so for during February, we have a Feed the Soul campaign where it's our goal to raise $1,000 a day for each day in February to support the breakfast bag program. It's a leap year, so our goal is a little higher this year. Normally we try to raise 28,000, but we're trying to raise 29,000 this year, and so that we can keep that program going. Last year, that program delivered almost 100,000 meals, so it's an important program to hundreds of seniors throughout our service area.
And where do people donate?
On our website, diabloregion.org.
And how many? So 100,000 meals. You had said some numbers, but how many people are you serving within that? Right? How many people do you serve in 2024?
We served over 7,500 seniors last year, and that number keeps going up as well. So yeah, you're talking about 7,500 individuals and then over 700,000 meals each year.
Do you and where does your funding as an organization come from? Is it all raised from individuals, foundations?
So prior to COVID, it was about split into thirds, with a third being government, and that's mostly county federal funds that pass through the state and then pass through the county. A third of that is primarily foundations and corporations, and then a third of individuals. Um, the government piece got a little bit bigger during COVID because of some of the federal COVID stimulus funds that have come down. And that has really been what has enabled us to grow our programs to meet the need. However, those funds were temporary. So that is one thing that, our organization is facing over these coming months of how we are going to, continue to sustain these programs. And we'll really be relying on the generous support of our community to be able to do that because our government funds, they were stimulus and they were meant to be temporary, and unfortunately, the need has not been temporary. So we have to figure that out.
So I would like to talk now and get your expertise. You work with a lot of seniors and communities, and you've been talking about government funding, government programs related to helping you guys as an organization. Governor Newsom has talked about a master plan on aging. The Contra Costa County is updating its general plan, but also has, I believe, an update going on for its senior aging plan to match what the governor is doing. Can you talk a little bit about what are those plans and what people should know?
Yeah, it was amazing and well received in the senior serving community that in 2019 Governor Newsom issued an executive order directing the state government to develop a statewide master plan on aging. And that was work that occurred over a year in developing some five main goals of improving, the aging environment in California. It's estimated that by 2030, a quarter of our population will be 60 or older. So our state needs to get ready. And that's true not only at the state level, but at the county level as well. In Contra Costa, currently 24% of our population is over 60. So we're pretty much at that quarter of the population already. And so it's really looking at how do we take the goals that were developed at the state level and implement them at the local level. And what does that actually mean in terms of concrete programs? And so that effort is really being led by our area agency on aging, which is, a department within the county government, but really engaging a wide range of community stakeholders and pro- doing focus groups and surveys of older adults to try to figure out, what are the biggest emerging needs that we're seeing? What are the changes that we're going to need to make to the social safety net to really adapt with the population? I mean, we know that food insecurity is a big one. We also know that having more age-friendly communities and, housing where seniors can live and age, at different stages of physical ability is really important. Transportation is certainly something that, affects all of us, but if you're older or, not as able-bodied as you once were, it is a lot more difficult to navigate our public transportation system when many of our older adults don't drive. So there's a lot of things that need to be addressed and the state did a wonderful job of creating kind of big picture goals of like we need to focus on healthcare and caregiving is another huge one. There's a shortage of caregivers and the workforce that works with older adults. There's a shortage because we don't pay them enough. And so we have to train and compensate at a fair level those jobs that are going to be taking care of us as we age. And so there's these big goals and then we have to figure out as a community how do we implement changes on a concrete level here in our community to make our community more age friendly. And that's a heavy lift. I mean, it's going to take some time and it's going to take some real investment, which, we have been very lucky to have investment from the local countywide sales tax Measure X, which has provided some funding to help develop that master plan on aging. And more will need to be invested in order to really create new programs that meet these needs because right now it's very difficult for older adults to navigate our a lot of our systems. It's very difficult to get a caregiver. It's very difficult to get around transportation wise. Having enough food is hard. Having enough income to stay in the Bay Area and to afford housing and other costs when you're not working anymore and you're not getting a cost of living adjustment to your income necessarily. And so all of those things contribute to people needing services like ours and really needing more than any one nonprofit can provide.
Yeah, there's a lot going on there. And at some point, we will bring in other guests to talk about I think each of those topics, right? What is the Tri-County area doing to develop their plans to match the governor's framework that Caitlin was talking about? How are we addressing transportation needs? And we have an upcoming episode with a couple of the bus organizations in Alameda and Contra Costa. And well, that's a great question to be asking them is how are they working to think about that but there's so many things you mentioned in there that I would just encourage people think about senior relatives that you've had and friends and family that you know, and how much Caitlin just addressed that they really need as time goes by, especially if their family is far away and not close to them.
Yeah, I mean, we definitely know, just for me, buying a house is very expensive. Getting around Contra Costa on public transportation is not the easiest, but I'm perfectly healthy and can, climb stairs and stand and wait for BART, and I have no problem with that. Imagine if, you're 85 years old and not so physically able, it becomes much more of a challenge. So yeah, definitely if you have transportation folks, I always want to ask them what they're doing around accessible transportation, especially affordable accessible transportation, because you or I can take a Lyft or an Uber pretty easily, but not most seniors either struggle with the technology or the cost or both.
That makes sense. There's definitely members of my family who are just in their 70s and just kinda, like, refuse to learn about it, and it's like, "Okay, I gotta call the Uber for them in a different
Yeah,
state."
yeah.
And yeah, just I was thinking this summer there was an accident in front of our house where somebody who I it was in their 90s was driving, still lived alone. His wife had already passed in a single family home, and he crashed into the street. Sunny day, no other cars, uh, very bad accident. And I think we had found out through other people that they were able to reach a daughter of his that lived like an hour or two away. But I don't know what the process is, but I can't imagine that his daughter wants him driving anymore or the police want him driving anymore after that. And so what do you do if you live in a single family home and you're 93? You can't walk the mile to the grocery store.
Exactly. I mean, I think that's what's so hard for many of us who haven't experienced it to understand of like, well, that person obviously shouldn't be driving and why do they still have their driver's license? Like, well, if you live in our county, it's very hard to get around and that driver's license can be literally your last shred of independence. And so it's really hard I know it would be really hard for me to give up my driver's license, even if I knew that it could be risky because it's how we get around. We don't live in the most dense urban center with perfect public transportation that goes everywhere. And even if it did, it can be really hard for an older person with physical limitations to be able to navigate that. And so sadly, that's when things happen. And so if there were better supports and better services to be able to provide, you know, transportation and door-to-door service for somebody like that, probably could be avoiding accidents and keeping everybody more safe.
Yeah, and I wanna come back to one point you made about 24% of Contra Costa population is over 60, right? Was that the number you used?
Yep.
And so how does the East Bay overall relate? Like, do we have a higher than average senior population? Are we on par currently with a lot of the rest of the state? Help us understand that.
I think we're slightly higher than the rest of the state. And especially in Contra Costa, as compared to, maybe Alameda or San Francisco that tend to have a younger population, we have a lot of retirement communities. We have, Rossmore, we have out in East County, Trilogy, and a lot of other senior living communities, which is great. But it also means that we have a larger population of older adults, and so we need to, invest proportionally in the services that provide service to them. The other thing that we are looking at as an organization, and I know our county is looking at as well, is we have one of the most diverse populations of seniors in the state. I think Contra Costa is the fourth most diverse county when it comes to seniors. And so we also have to figure out how those services are going to be and continue to be accessible for people of different backgrounds, whether it's language access or, what we look at our organization is the food we're providing culturally competent? not everybody wants the same meal. And so that can be challenging from a logistical standpoint, but it's something that we have to do. And so last year we created what we call cultural cuisine program, and that provides a Latin American menu for folks so that imagine people get to choose what they eat. And so we have kind of a more traditional American fare menu and then a Latin American menu. And we hope eventually to be able to expand to different types of food. But really, most of us like to have some choice over what we eat. And people from different cultural backgrounds are definitely more comfortable with different types of food. And so I think, it's not just about food, but it's about all of the services we provide and how we're meeting people where they're at, whether that's from a language perspective or having staff that's from the community, having volunteers that are from the community and really know how to provide services in a way that speaks to people from different backgrounds and different parts of the world.
Yeah, so important and hard to do as you're managing everything else that you have and just trying to get the food out the door. Anything else that I haven't asked that you want to touch on today and let our guests know?
So much of the safety net for older adults is about collaboration and partnership. Not any organization does not do it alone. It really is a safety net of various different nonprofits that work together to make sure that we're providing services to older adults in the best way that we can with the support of our communities. So we work a lot with choice in aging and empowered aging and Contra Costa Senior Legal Services and Mobility Matters and the Family Caregiver Alliance and just a lot of other really great organizations in our community that provide things like caregiving support or transportation to medical appointments or adult day health or folks that advocate for people in long-term care or provide pro bono legal services to people that are facing eviction, elder abuse, things like that. So it really is, one not one organization can do it alone. We all do it in partnership with each other and with support from our community, individuals, foundations, and our government partners. And so it really is it's something that I encourage people to learn more about before they get to the point of being in crisis and needing our services because many people do come to us when things are pretty dire. They don't have any food in the house. They live alone and it's an emergency. And I think for many of us, we don't do a whole, getting old is not something we want to think about. And yet it's going to happen to all of us if we're lucky because the alternative is not good. So it behooves us all to investigate what is out there in terms of services for people, whether it's because you have an aging parent, you're getting older yourself, as we all are. It really is important to look at what is out there and what can help support and plan for the future because we all are going to need some sort of service as we age and it can be a big relief if you kind of already have a bit of a lay of the land.
Yeah, so much to unpack that I know I haven't really thought of about just my own family and what's going on in the community. So that was really good insight to share. One other question, just as we talk about food insecurity and your background. I was at a dinner last night and there was a buffet line. It was a special event. And there must have been at least 50, 100 chicken breasts, so much extra food left over, ravioli, salad. What happens to all of that? I mean, maybe the staff gets a good meal, which they're entitled to, but there had to be more food left over than that. Can that be reused?
It depends. There are organizations that do recovery of prepared food. And typically if stuff is, kind of the chicken breasts that are prepared and sitting in the refrigerator but have never gone out to be served, that is great to donate to one of these organizations. But there's also a lot of food safety risks with prepared food, especially if it's been sitting out on a buffet line. So, it's kind of one of those things where you don't want food to go to waste, but you also want to be really careful, especially if you're serving a sensitive population like seniors. So, I mean, I know for us, since we do deliver prepared food, there's a lot of food safety training that our staff have to take. We take the temperature of food before it leaves on a route and at the end of the route and mid route, because we just need to make sure we're packing it in ice and in coolers and there's a lot that goes into making sure the last thing, the worst nightmare is that we get someone sick. And so we've got to, have really stringent processes and procedures to ensure that we're keeping food safe. And so sometimes that food can be recovered, but it can be a bit risky. So it kind of depends on the situation and typically, unfortunately, food, if it's been sitting out on a buffet line, I would not recommend trying to save and serve it to, a mass population. Definitely have the staff take it home, whenever we have an event, it's like, our staff then and volunteers have lunch for the next couple days as we take it back to the office and put it in the fridge. But yeah, it can be a little bit of a delicate situation, especially if you're serving any kind of vulnerable population.
Sure. That's great. And give us the website one more time for the February campaign so people can check that out or learn to volunteer.
Sure. So our website is mowdiabloregion.org. And they can go, or you can Google Meals on Wheels Diablo region, and you can go on there. Our campaign is Feed the Soul, but really we welcome people to give, volunteer, get involved at any time of the year. It's really, what sustains us. And we're really grateful to have a very generous community.
All right. Thank you for being here, Caitlin Sly from Meals on Wheels. Wait, don't leave yet. Hit subscribe. Make sure you get the weekly updates. We have a new episode every Wednesday for stuff happening in the East Bay. In the meantime, follow me on LinkedIn, Jared Ash, or check out our firm where we have a weekly newsletter and blog at Capstone Government Affairs on LinkedIn. Thanks for joining us today on the Capstone Conversation.